Namaskar, my dear friends. This is video number 19 on Talks with Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. I start with video number 19 with talk 321. Devotee puts the question: Miseries appear in Jagrat, why should they appear? Maharshi replies: If you see yourself, they will not appear. Devotee: If I turn to look who am I do not find anything. Maharshi: How did you remain in your sleep? There was no I thought there and you were happy. Whereas there are thoughts flowering in the wake of the root thought I in the Jagrat, and these hide the inherent happiness. Get rid of these thoughts which are the obstacles to happiness. Your natural state is one of happiness as was evident in your sleep. Devotee: I do not know anything of my sleep experience, Maharshi, but you know that it was happiness. Otherwise, you would not be saying I slept happily. When there is no thought, no I, and nothing in fact except yourself, you are happy. That is the whole truth. This is exactly what is conveyed by the Mahavakya Tattvamasi. You are that. Find yourself and then that is known. Devotee: How is that Brahma? Maharshi: Why do you want to know of Brahma apart from yourself? The scripture says you are that. The self is intimate to you and you cannot indeed be without the self. Realize it. That is the realization of Brahma also. Devotee: But I am unable to do it. I am too weak to realize myself. Mercy: In that case, surrender yourself unreservedly and the higher power will reveal itself. Devotee: What is unconditional surrender? Maharshi: If one surrenders oneself, there will be no one to ask questions or to be thought of. Either the thoughts are eliminated by holding on to the root thought I, or one surrenders oneself unconditionally to the higher power. These are the only two ways for realization. Talk number 322. A cultured lady, daughter of a well-known solicitor of Madras, asked, What should one do in order to remain free from thoughts as advised by you? Is it only the enquiry, Who am I? Mercy: Only to remain still, do it and see. Devotee: It is impossible. Mercy: Exactly. For the same reason, the inquiry, Who am I, is advised. Devotee: Raising the question, no response comes from within. Mercy: What kind of response do you expect? Are you not there? What more? Devotee: Thoughts rise up more and more. Mercy: Then and there is the same question, Who am I? Devotee: Should I do so as each thought arises? Well, it is the world our thought only? Mercy: Leave this question to the world. Let it ask, How did I come into being? Devotee: Do you mean that it is not related to me? Mercy: Nothing is perceived in deep sleep. All these are seen only after waking. Only after thoughts arise, the world comes into being. What can it be but thought? Another visitor asked, What should we do to make the mind still? Mercy: First let the mind be caught hold of and brought here, then we shall consider ways and means of stilling it. Devotee: I mean to say that it is always changing even when we do our japa. Mercy: Japa is meant only for stilling the mind. Devotee: What japa is good for it? Mercy: Anything suitable such as Gayatri. Devotee: Will Gayatri do? Mercy: Can anything excel? If only those who cannot do it look for others. It contains the whole range of truth in it. Chanting japa will lead to dhyana meditation and it is the means for realizing the self. Devotee: Will half an hour a day do for? Will half an hour a day do for it? Mercy. It must be done always or as long as you can. Talk number 323. While explaining stanza 6 in Arunachala Ashtaka, Sri Bhagwan observed as follows. The final word in the previous stanza asks, is there one? The initial words in the present stanza answer, yes, there is the one. It proceeds. Though it is the only one, yet by its wonderful power it gets reflected on the tiny dot I, the ego, otherwise known as ignorance or the aggregate of latent tendencies. This reflected light is relative knowledge. This, according to one's prarabdha, past karma now fructifying, manifests the inner latent tendencies as the outer gross world and withdraws the gross external world as the subtle internal tendencies. Such power is called mind in the subtle plane and brain in the physical plane. This mind or brain acts as the magnifier to that eternal one being and shows it forth as the expanded universe. In the waking and dream states, the mind is outward bent, and in sleep it is inward bent. With the mind as the medium, the one supreme being seems diversified in the waking and dream states and remains withdrawn in the sleep state or soon, etc. Therefore, you are only that and cannot be otherwise. Whatever the change is, the same one being remains as yourself. There is nothing beside yourself. The previous stanza says, once exposed to sunlight, a sensitive plate cannot take on images. Similarly, the mind, the sensitive plate, after exposure in your light, cannot reflect the world anymore. Moreover, the sun is of you only. Should his rays be so powerful as to prevent images being formed, how much more so should your light be? It is thus said that there is nothing apart from the one being, yourself in the present stanza, the tiny dot is equal to the ego. The tiny dot made up of darkness equals the ego consisting of latent tendencies, the seer or the subject or the ego rising. It expands itself as the sin, the object or the antahakarnas, the inner organs. The light must be dim in order to enable the ego to rise. In broad daylight, a rope does not look like a snake. The rope itself cannot be seen in thick darkness. So there is no chance of mistaking it for a snake. Only in dim light, in the dusk, in light darkened by shadows, or in darkness lighted by dim light, does the mistake occur of a rope seeming a snake. Similarly, it is for the pure radiant being to rise up the ego. It is possible only in its light diffused through darkness. This darkness is otherwise known as the original ignorance, original sin. The light passing through it is called reflected light. The reflected light on its own merits is commonly known as the pure mind or Isvara or God. Isvara is well known to be unified with Maya. In other words, the reflected light is Isvara. The other name, pure mind, implies impure mind also. It is the Rajasic or active mind or the ego. This too can be projected from the former Sattvic mind through another reflection only. Thus, the ego is the product of the second darkness, avidya. Then comes the tamasic or the dull mind in the shape of Antahkarnas, the inner organs, disappear as the world. From the standpoint of the gross body, it may be said to shine forth externally as the world by means of the brain. But the gross body is of the mind only. The mind may be said to consist of four inner organs or the principle composed of thoughts, or the sixth sense, or combining intellect with the ego and chitta with the mind, that is memory faculty with the thinking faculty. It must be taken to consist of two parts, the ego and the mind. In the latter case, the Vijnanatma, the intellect self or the ego or the seer, form the subject and the mental sheath or the scene, the object. The waking, dream, and sleep states have their origin in the original darkness, Mula Avidya, with the mind outgoing and deriving experiences from its modes in the waking and dream states and indrawn in sleep. Experiencing with modes of Maya, a unique power regulates all activities of the individuals and of the universe. All these are only phenomena passing through the reflected light on the substratum of the self-radiant being, just as a rope snake cannot be seen in broad daylight, not rope itself in thick darkness. So also the world appear neither in the samadhi state of self-shining pure being or in deep sleep, soon, etc. Only in reflected light, light mixed with darkness or knowledge soiled by ignorance, can the world, not independent of its source, seem to rise up, flourish and be resolved. Its diversity too cannot be inclusive of the reality, the original source. Here a play is going on in which the one single being becomes manifold, is objectified and then withdrawn. There must be a Shakti, power to do it, and wonderful too. She cannot also be independent of her origin. In the self-shining pure being, this Shakti cannot be seen. Nevertheless, her actions are only too well known how sublime. From her sublime original activity, that is power vibrating sattva field reflection results. From it the rajasic ego, then tamasic thought forms which are commonly known as knowledge or the light corresponding to the magnifying lens. Just as the artificial light is projected through a lens onto the screen, so also the reflected light passes through thought, the magnifier, before expanding as the world beyond it. Furthermore, thought itself, the world in seed form, seems to be the wide external world. Such is the extraordinary power. In this way, Iswara, individual, and the world are only of the reflected light, having the self-shining single being for the substratum. Now, what is this I thought, the ego? Is it the subject or the object in the scheme of things? Inasmuch as it witnesses all other objects in the waking and dream states, or at any rate we think that it does so, it must be considered to be the subject. On realizing the pure self, however, it will be an object only. Whose is this? I thought, the ego. This investigation from the vichara. I thought and this thought are both emanations from the same light. They are related to Rajoguna and Tamoguna, respectively. In order to have the reflected light, pure sattva, free from Rajas and Tamas, it must shine forth as I, unbroken by this thought. This pure state momentarily intervenes between sleep and waking. If prolonged, it is cosmic consciousness or even Iswara. This is the only passage to the realization of the self-shining Supreme Being. Again, there are two kinds of experiences in deep sleep as recollected after waking. That is, I slept happily, unaware of anything. Happiness and ignorance are the experiences. Thus, we see the power modified as Avarna, darkness, and 2. Vikshepa, diversity. The mind is the result of Vikshepa. Talks with Ramana Maharshi, 10th January 1937. Some reminiscences. Talk 324. 1. While in Sakandasramam, Sri Bhagwan saw a white toad, small and long, at a distance of about 10 feet from him. Sri Bhagwan stared at it and it stared at him. Suddenly it took a long jump and lodged itself precisely on one of the eyes of Sri Bhagwan, who quickly closed it, and so it was not injured. Second, there were two peacocks which used to strut with their feathers spread out like a spangled fan. A cobra too used to take part in the pastime and raised its hood and moved about in their midst. 3. Sri Bhagwan says that the peacock, as soon as it sights a crane lizard, goes straight to it and meekly places its neck down before the lizard, which bites it off and kills the peacock. 4th, Rangaswamy Iyengar was once out on the hill. A leopard was nearby. He threw a stone, it turned towards him. He hurried away for his life. Sri Bhagwan met him on the way and asked what the matter was. Iyengar simply said leopard as he was running. Sri Bhagwan went where the beast was and it moved away soon after. All this happened at the time of the plague. Leopards used to roam freely by the side of the temple, sometimes in twos and threes. 5th, Sri Bhagwan said, a frog is often compared to a yogi. It remains of the underskin below the neck. Again, frogs can remain for extraordinary long periods with their animation suspended. They are said to swallow their tongues. Swallowing the tongue is a yogic practice. The animation is suspended. The yogi does not die, but the tongue must be drawn out by someone else before life activity is resumed. It is a wonder how the frog brings out the already swallowed tongue and resumes the activity. 11th January 1937. 6. While reading Raghuvira Ramayana written in easy Malayalam prose, there was a passage relating how Hanuman reached Lanka mentally before he crossed over physically so that island. Sri Bhagwan emphasized the point that the mental approach accomplishes the purpose earlier than physical action. 7. Sri Bhagwan related the following funny anecdote. Azhuthachan, a great Malayali saint and author, had a few fish concealed in him when he entered the temple. Some enemy reported it to the worshippers in the temple. The man was searched and taken to the king. The king asked him, why did you take the fish into the temple? He replied, it is not my fault. I had it concealed in my clothes. The others exposed the fish in the temple. The fault lies in exposure. Excreta within the body are not considered filthy, but when excreted, they are considered filthy. So also with this. 12th January 1937, talk number 325. Mr. Rama Shastri from Guntur district composed 8 slokas on Bhagwan and read them out with feeling. The Shastri then prayed for guidance. I am a sansari unfit for Jnana Marga. The affairs of the world are distracting me. Please instruct me in what I should do. Mercy, think of Bhagwan. How will the affairs of the world Distract him, you and they are in him. Devotee, may I do Nama Samarna? What Nama shall I take? Mercy, you are Rama Sastri. Make that name significant. Be one with Rama. 13th January 1937. Talk number 326. In answer to a question by a long resident attendant, Sri Bhagwan said, everybody complains of the restlessness of the mind. Let the mind be found and then they will know. True, when a man sits down to meditate, thoughts rush up by dozens. The mind is only a bundle of thoughts. The attempts to push through the barrage of thoughts is unsuccessful. If one can by any means abide in the self, it is good. For those who are unable to do so, chanting or meditation, japa or dhyana is prescribed. It is like giving a piece of chain to an elephant to hold in its trunk. The trunk of the elephant is usually restless. It puts it out in all directions when taken out in the streets of the town. If given a chain to carry, the restlessness is checked. Similarly, with the restless mind, if made to engage in japa or dhyana, other thoughts are warded off and the mind concentrates on a single thought. It thus becomes peaceful. It does not mean that peace is gained without a prolonged struggle. The other thoughts must be fought out. Here is another illustration. Suppose a cow plays a rogue and strays into neighbor's fields to graze. She is not easily weaned from her stealthy habit. Think how she can be kept in the stall. If forcibly tethered in the stall, she simply bides her time to play the rogue. If she is tempted with fine grass in the stall, she takes one mouthful on the first day and again waits for the opportunity to run away. The next day she takes two mouthfuls, so she takes more and more on each succeeding day until finally she is weaned from her wicked tendencies. When entirely free from bad habits, she might be safely left free and she would not stray into the neighbor's pasture land. Even when beaten in the stall, she does not afterwards leave the place. Similarly, with the mind, it is accustomed to stray outward by the force of the latent vasanas manifesting as thoughts. So long as there are vasanas contained within, they must come out and exhaust themselves. The thoughts comprise the mind. Searching what the mind is, the thoughts will recoil and the seeker will know that they arise from the self. It is the aggregate of these thoughts that will call mind. If one realizes that the thoughts arise from the self and abide in their source, the mind will disappear. After the mind ceases to exist and bliss of peace has been realized, one will find it then as difficult to bring out a thought as he now finds it difficult to keep out all thoughts. Here the mind is the cow playing the rogue. The thoughts are the neighbor's pasture. One's own primal being free from thoughts is the stall. The bliss of peace is too good to be disturbed. A man fast asleep hates to be awakened and ordered to mind his business. The bliss of sleep is too enthralling to be sacrificed to the work born of thoughts. The thought free state is one's primal state and full of bliss. Is it not miserable to leave such a state for the thought ridden and unhappy one? If one wants to abide in the thought free state, a struggle is inevitable. One must fight one's way through before regaining one's original primal state. If one succeeds in the fight and reaches the goal, the enemy, namely the thoughts, will all subside in the self and disappear entirely. The thoughts are the enemy. They amount to the creation of the universe. In their absence, there is neither the world nor God, the Creator. The bliss of the self is the single being only. When Prahlada was in Samadhi, Vishnu thought within himself, this Asura being in Samadhi, all the Asuras are in the peace. There is no fight, no trial of strength, no search for power, nor the means for gaining power. In the absence of such means for power, yoga, yagna, etc., that is, the gods are not thriving. There is no new creation, nor even any existence justified. So I will wake up him. I wake him up, then the asuras will rise up, their original nature will manifest itself, the gods will challenge them, the asuras and others will then seek strength and adopt the means for its acquisition. Yagna, etc. will flourish. The gods will thrive. There will be more and more of creation, more of fight, and I shall have enough to do. So Vishnu awakened Prahlada, blessing him with eternal life and Jivan Mukti. Deva Asura fight was resumed and the old order of things was restored so that the universe continues in its eternal nature. Devotee, how could God Himself wake up the Asura element and bring about constant warfare? Is it not pure goodness, the nature of God? Mercy, goodness is only relative. Good always implies bad also. They always coexist. The one is the observer of the other. Talk 327. The audience in the hall were very attentively listening. One of them, a sincere devotee of Sri Bhagwan, was so impressed by it that he soon lost himself. He later described his experience as follows. I was long wondering where the current starts, within the body or elsewhere. Suddenly my body grew tenuous until it disappeared. The enquiry, who am I, went on very clearly and forcibly. The sound of I alone persisted. There was one vast expanse and nothing more. There was a hazy perception of the occurrences in the hall. I knew that people stood up to salute at the end of a Vedic chant. I wanted to stand. The thought soon deserted me. I was again lost in the one expanse. The experience continued until I heard the voice of Sri Bhagwan. That made me collect myself. Then I stood up and saluted. A strange feeling continued for more than half an hour. I cannot forget it, it is still haunting me. Sri Bhagwan listened to his words and was silent for minutes. A few observations fell from his lips. One may seem to go out of the body, but the body itself is not more than our thought. There can be no body in the absence of thought, no outgoing or incoming in absence of body. However, owing to habit, the feeling of going out arises. A particle of hail falling on the surface of the sea melts away and becomes water, wave, fruit, etc. in the sea. Similarly, the subtle intellect rises up as the tiny dot ego from the heart and bulging out finally enters into and becomes one with the heart. Though milk remains as wide as the sea, can you drink it with a mouth as wide as the sea? You can suck it only through the tiny capillaries of the paps. Namavalar, the Western White Saints, has said, only myself is you. What does it mean? Before I realized myself, I was wandering, looking out for you. Having now realized myself, I see that you are myself. How will you, having now realized myself, I see that you are myself. How will this fit in with qualified monism? It must be explained thus. Pervading myself, you remain as the Antaryami, immanent being. Thus I am a part of your body and you are the owner of body. Sriri, having given up one's own body as not being oneself, why should one become another's, God's body? If one body is not the self, other bodies also are non-self. The protagonists of qualified monism think that individuality is necessary to experience the bliss. Individuality, that is, I-ness, should not be lost. Ah, the self is not the body, but yourself becomes the body of God. Is it not absurd? Or if you make prapatti, surrender yourself to God, you have made yourself over to Him and you are His and no longer yours. If He is in need of a body, let Him look out for Himself. You need not say He is the owner of a body. Talk number 328. A European gentleman began in this is 17th January 1937, talk number 328. A European gentleman began in measured tones and spoke clearly and slowly. Why should individuals remain caught up in the affairs of this world and reap troubles as a result? Should they not be free? If they are in the spiritual world, they will have greater freedom. Mercy. The world is only spiritual. Since you are identifying yourself with the physical body, you speak of this world as being physical and the other world as spiritual, whereas that which is only spiritual. Devotee, do the disembodied souls, that is the spirits, have a deeper insight and enjoy greater freedom? Mercy, because you identify yourself with this body, you speak of the disembodied souls as being spirits. From these limitations, you talk of their limitations and seek to know their capacities. Even the disembodied souls have subtle bodies, otherwise, you would not say disembodied souls. Disembodiment means divested of this gross body. Inasmuch as you endow them with individuality, they are centered in their subtle bodies. Their limitations will be according to their own state. Just as you feel the burden of your limitations, they also feel the burden of their limitations. What I mean by spirit and spiritual world is the absolute spirit and not relative. If you realize yourself as the spirit, you will see that this world is only spiritual and not physical. Devotee, are their bodies temporary as our bodies are? Do they reincarnate, Maharshi? These questions arise because you think yourself the body. This body has birth and death, and when this body falls, another body arises, which is called reincarnation. But are you the body? If you find that you are not this body but the spirit, you will be free from gross or subtle bodies, and then there will be no limitations. Where is the world physical or spiritual in the absence of any limitations? How will the question of reincarnation arise? Again, consider it from another point of view. You create a dream body for yourself in the dream and act with that dream body. The same is falsified in the waking state. At present, you think that you are this body and not the dream body. In your dream, this body is falsified by dream body. So that you see neither of these bodies is real, because each of them is true for a time and false at other times. That which is real must be real forever. But you say I. This I consciousness is present all through the three states. There is no change in it. That is alone real. The three states are false. They are only for the mind. It is the mind which obstructs your vision of your true nature. Your true nature is that of infinite spirit. That was the case in your sleep. You note the limitations in the other two states. What is the difference due to there was no mind in sleep, but it exists in the dream and the waking states. The feeling of limitation is the work of the mind. What is mind? Find it. If you search for it, it will vanish by itself, for it has no real existence. It is comprised of thoughts. It disappears with the cessation of thoughts. Devotee, do I remain then? Mercy, what is your experience in sleep? There were no thoughts, no mind, and yet you remained then. Devotee, when I try to meditate, I am unable to do so because my mind wanders. What should I do? Mercy, your question furnishes the answer. First, with regard to the first part of the question, you say you concentrate but do not succeed. You means the self. On what do you concentrate? Where do you feel? Are there two selves for the one self to concentrate on the other? Which is the self now complaining of failure? There cannot be two selves. There is only one self. That need not concentrate, you ask. But then why is there no happiness? What is that prevents you from remaining as the spirit which you are in sleep? You yourself admit that it is the wandering mind. Find out the mind. If its wandering stops, it will be found to be the self, you, I. Consciousness, which is spirit eternal, it is beyond knowledge and ignorance. Devotee, I am hard worked and find little time to practice concentration. Are there any aids for it? Is control of breath a good aid? Maharshi, prana and mind arise from the same source. The source can be reached by holding the breath or tracing the mind. If you cannot do the latter, the former will no doubt be helpful. Regulation of breath is gained by watching its movement. If the mind is washed, thought says, peace results, and it is your true nature. King Janka said, I have now found the robber, namely the mind, who has been robbing me of my I-ness. I will instantly kill this thief. The perturbation owing to thoughts appears to rob the self of its peace. The perturbation is the mind. When that seizes the mind is said to take flight, the self remains as the undisturbed substratum. Another person interposed, the mind must kill the mind. Mercy, yes, if there be the mind, a search for it discloses its non-existence. How can anything that does not exist be killed? Devotee, is not mental japa better than oral japa? Mercy, oral japa consists of sounds. The sounds arise from the thoughts. For one must think before one expresses the thoughts in words. The thoughts form the mind. Therefore, mental japa is better than oral japa. Devotee, should we not contemplate the japa and repeat it orally also? Mercy, when the japa becomes mental, where is the need for sounds thereof? Japa becoming mental becomes contemplation, dhyana, contemplation, and mental japa are the same. When thoughts cease to be promiscuous and one thought persist to the exclusion of all others. It is said to be contemplation. The object of japa or dhyana is the exclusion of several thoughts and confining oneself to one single thought. Then that thought to vanishes into its source, absolute consciousness, that is the self. The mind engages in japa and then sinks into its own source. Devotee, the mind is said to be from the brain. Maharshi, where is the brain? It is in the body. I say that the body itself is a projection of the mind. You speak of the brain when you think of the body. It is the mind which creates the body, the brain in it, and also ascertains that the brain is its seat. Devotee. Sri Bhagwan has said in one of the works that the japa must be traced to its source. Is it not the mind that is meant? Maharshi, all these are only the workings of the mind. Japa helps to fix the mind to a single thought. All other thoughts are first subordinated until they disappear. When it becomes mental, it is called dhyana. Dhyana is your true nature. It is, however, called dhyana because it is made with effort. Effort is necessary so long as thoughts are promiscuous. Because you are with other thoughts, you call the continuity of a single thought meditation or dhyana. If that dhyana becomes effortless, it will be found to be your real nature. Talk number 329. In the morning, Sri Bhagwan read out a short passage from Saint Estella in the Tamil Ramakrishna Vision. Its purport is your enemies are lust, passion, etc. If you feel injured, turn within and find out the cause of the injury. It is not external to you. The external causes are mere superimpositions. If you cannot injure yourself, will the all merciful God injure you in any manner? Sri Bhagwan further said that Saint Estella was a good saint whose teachings were quite sound. Talk number 330. Sri Bhagwan, being asthmatic, is hoarse in throat. Oranges were brought as offerings. Pieces were distributed as usual. Sri Bhagwan was clearing his throat and was obliged to spit out the orange in his mouth. He said that he had to spit it out. A gentleman said, probably it does not suit Sri Bhagwan's health. Maharshi, would you say so if you had brought the fruits instead of the other person? 18th January 1937, talk number 331. Mrs. Ruma Jennings, an American lady of the International Peace League, asked Sri Bhagwan about the spread of peace in the world. Sri Bhagwan replied that if one gains the peace of the self, it will spread itself without any effort on the part of the individual. When one is not oneself peaceful, how can that one spread peace in the world? The lady asked if it was not true that the East has a scientific approach to the realization of the self. Mercy, you are already the self. No elaborate science is necessary to establish it. Devotee, I understand the general truth of it, but there must be a practical method for it which I call science. Mercy. The cessation of such thoughts is the realization of the self. Illustration. The necklace supposed lost. One does not see the world or one's own body, being away from the self, always being the self. One sees everything else. God and the world are all in the heart. See the seer and everything will be found to be the self. Change your outlook. Look within. Find the seer, who is the substratum of the subject and the object. Find it, and all problems are solved. The lady was then told of the pamphlet, Who Am I? She agreed to read it before asking further questions of Sri Bhagwan. Talk number 320. Talk number 332. Devotee, what are the three voids? Mukpads, Maharshi. First, Tat, Ishvara Turiya. Second, Tvam, Jiva Turiya. Third, Asi Turiya. Turiya is the substratum of the waking, dream, and sleep states. Devotee, the first two are all right. What is the third? Mercy, all pervasiveness is said to be the waking, all shining is said to be the dream, perfection, ananta is said to be the sleep. That which underlies this is asituriya. Devotee, it is so strange, Maharshi. Is that all? There is no limit to polemics. Listen, they say the Mahavakya Tattva Asi is common. Another containing five words, Tattvam Asi Ati Nijam, is the most secret one taught by Dakshinamurti in silence, corresponding to the five words they formulate five states. Again, look at Vichara Sangraha. The author of distinguish Adhara from Adhisthana. According to him, the rope is always Adhara both when it looks like a snake and otherwise. The rope is Adhisthana because it looks different from what it really is. That is common. Samanya Adhisthana. Again, its appearance as the snake itself is Vishesha Adhisthana. Then the question is raised. The Adhisthana of Jiva is one, that of Isvara is another. How can these two Adhishthanas become one? He replies, there are the same Adhara for both the Adhishthanas. Furthermore, the mentions several kyatis. Number one, Asat khyati, rope being present, there appears the snake which is not present there. 2. Sat khyati, rope itself looking like snake. Third, Atma Khayati, rope remaining unidentified, the remembrance of snake formerly seen elsewhere creates the illusion. Fourth, Akhyati, total unreal. Fifth, Anatha Khyati, mental image of snake projected and seen as if it were in front of oneself. Sixth, Anirvachaniya Khyati, inexplicable. Here he raises the question, should the world be any one of these, whether illusory or unreal? It must be the result of previous experiences. It must have been real at the time, real once must be real always. He answers it. The experience need not necessarily be real. Not having seen a real snake but only seeing a picture of it and gaining an impression, one can mistake a rope to be a snake. Thus the world need not be real. Why waste time in such polemics? Polemics. Only turn your mind inward and spend the time usefully. In the union of the individual with the Supreme is hearsay and the individual directly experienced. You can make use only of direct experience, therefore, look who you are. Why is Isvara mentioned then? Because you see the world and want to know how it came into being. They say that it was created by God. If you know that He created you and all else, your mind is a little satisfied and becomes less restless than otherwise. But it is not realization. It can be only if you realize yourself. This is perfection or realization, etc. To resume polemics, the author of Virti Prabhakara claims to have studied 3,50,000 books before writing this book. What is the use? Can they bring in realization of the self? Vichara Sangra is full of logic and technical terms. Can these ponderous volumes serve any real purpose? However, some people read them and then seek sages only to see if they can meet their questions. To read them, to discover new doubts and to solve them is a source of pleasure to them. Knowing it to be sheer waste, the way sages do not encourage such people. Encourage them once and there will be no end. Once the inquiry into the self can be of use. Those familiar with logic, Virti, Pat, Bhakara, Vichara, Sangraha or Sutra, Bhasha or similar large works cannot rally small works like Truth Revealed dealing only with the self and that pointedly to because they have accumulated vasanas. Only those whose minds are less muddy or are pure can relish small and purposeful works. Talk number 333. Pratyabhija equals prapti plus abhija. Abhijna. Abhigyana is direct perception. Prati is to be reminded of what was already known. This is an elephant direct perception. This is that elephant is Pratyabhijna. In technical works, Pratyabhijna is used for realizing the ever-present reality and recognizing it. Sunya, wide or blank, Ati Sunya, beyond Sunya, and Mahasunya, immense, wide, all mean the same. That is the real being only. 20th January 1937, talk number 234. Sri Bhagwan said that he felt no sensation in his legs though they were massaged. If they serve the purpose of walking, what does it matter if sensation is lost? He asked. Then in the course of conversation, he related that a ray of light has been found which, when projected, does not reveal the operator but enables him to witness the scene. So it is with Siddhas. They are only pure light and can see others, whereas they cannot be seen by others. For example, Prabhulinga, while touring in the north, came across Gorakhnath. The latter displayed his yogic powers. For example, when his arm was cut by a sword, the sword was blunted without inflicting injury on him. This is making the body proof against injury. Kaya Siddhi. Prabhulinga offered himself to be cut. When the sword was thrust, it passed through and through his body as if it was air, and there was no injury on the body. Gorakh was astonished and offered himself as the disciple of Prabhulinga. Again, there was a dialogue between Shiva and Parvati in Kailash. Shiva said that Alamma was one who would not be affected by her blandishments. Parvati wanted to try it and so sent her tamasic quality to incarnate as a king's daughter on the earth in order that she might entice Alamma. She grew up as a highly accomplished girl. She used to sing in the temple. Alamma used to go there and play on the drum. She lost herself in the play of the drum. She fell in love with him. They met in her bedroom. When she embraced him, he became intangible. She grew lovesick, but a celestial damsel was sent to remind her of her purpose on the earth. She resolved to overthrow Alma but did not succeed. Finally, she went up to Kailas. Then Parvati sent her Sattvic quality, who was born as a Brahman sannyasini. When she surrendered to Alma, she realized his true greatness. Sri Bhagwan spoke very appreciatively of Naina, that is Kaya Kantha Ganpati Muni for about an hour. How he wrote Uma Sahasranama and Hara Sahasram. How he taught his student, how he engaged in dispute with Bhattasri Narayana Sastri, how meek and humble he was, those who learned and capable, etc. Sri Bhagwan related how Nakirar, a Sangha Pulwar poet, faced the wrath of Shiva on questioning some composition of Shiva in Tamil, how he was taken captive by a spirit and afterwards released. Nakirar was doing tapas on the bank of Tirtha. A leaf fell down from a tree. Half the leaf touched the water and the other half was on the ground. Suddenly the water leaf became a fish and the land half became a bird. Each of them was united to the other by the leaf and struggled to go into its own element. Nakirar was watching it in wonder, and suddenly a spirit came down from the above and carried him away to a cave where were already 999 captives, all of whom were Tapobhrashta, those who had fallen away from their austerities. Devotee, was Nakirare Tapobhrashta? Mercy, yes. While engaged in contemplation, why did he fall away from contemplation and take to watching the mysterious happening in front of him? He continued to say how Nakkirar composed Tirumruhu Trupidai and obtained the release of all the thousand prisoners. 21st January 1937, top number 335, devotee. How will the sexual impulse cease to be? Mercy, when differentiation ceases. Devotee, how can it be affected? Mercy, the other sex and its relation are only mental concepts. The Upanishad says that all are dear because the self is beyond of all. One's happiness is within. The love is of the self only. It is only within. Do not think it to be without. Then differentiation ceases to operate. 22nd January 1937, talk number 336. A certain Vaishya who seems to have studied the Upanishads and Srimad Bhagavata Gita asked some questions. Devotee, how to realize the self? Maharshi, the self is always directly perceived. There is no moment when it is not so. How then is to be ascertained? Find out the self, you are that. Devotee, but it is said the heart knots are cut away and all doubts, and when the Supreme is found, the word drishti is used. Maharshi, to be the self is the same as seeing the self. There are no two selves for the one to see the other. Later he continued the same question of investigation of the self. Devotee, how to realize the self? Mercy, it is already realized. One should know this simple fact, that's all. Devotee, but I do not know it. How shall I know it? Mercy. Do you deny your existence? Devotee, no, how can that be done? Mercy. Then the truth is admitted. Devotee, yet I do not see. How shall I realize the self? Mercy. Find out who says I. Devotee, yes, I say I. Mercy. Who is this I? Is it the body or someone besides the body? Devotee, it is not the body, it is someone besides it. Mercy, find it out. I am unable to do it. How shall I find it? Mercy, you are now aware of the body. You were not aware of the body in deep sleep. Still, you remained in sleep. After waking up, you hold the body and say, I cannot realize the self. Did you say so in your sleep? Because you were undivided, akhanda. Then you did not say so. Now that you are contracted within the limits of the body, you say, I have not realized. Why do you limit yourself and then feel miserable? Be of your true nature and happy. You did not say, I in sleep. You say so now. Why? Because you hold to the body. Find out where from this I comes, then the self is realized. The body being insentient cannot say I. The self being infinite cannot say I either. Who then says I? Devotee, I do not yet understand how to find the I. Mercy, find out where from this I arises. Then this I will disappear and the infinite self will remain. This I is only the note between the sentient and the insentient. The body is not I, the self is not I. Who then is the I? Where from does it arise? Devotee, where from does it arise? Mercy, find out. Devotee, I do not know. Please enlighten me. Mercy, it is not from without, it is from within. Where does it come from? If elsewhere you can be led there, being within you must find it out yourself. Devotee, from the head. Mercy, does the concept of head arise after the eye or does eye arise from the head? If I be in the head, why do you bend it when sleep overpowers you? I is ever constant, so also must its seat be. If the head bends at one time and is erect another, how can it be the seat of I? Your head is laid flat in sleep. When awake it is raised up. Can it be the I? Devotee, which is it then? Mercy, I comes from within. When asleep there is no I. Just before waking there is I thought. Devotee, the heart note is said to be between the eyebrows. Mercies, some say between the eyebrows, others at the coccyx, and so on. All these are from the standpoint of the body. The body comes after the I thought. Devotee, but I cannot divest myself of the body. Mercy, so you admit that you are not the body. Devotee, if there is pain in the body, I feel it, but not if another body is injured. I cannot get over this body. Mercy. This identity is the cause of such feeling. That is the Hridaya Granthi, heart knot. Devotee, how is this not to go? Maharshi, for whom is the knot? Why do you want it to go? Does it ask or do you ask? Devotee, I cannot ask, I am asking. Mercy, who is that I? If that is found, the knot will not remain. Devotee, the knot is concomitant with the body. The body is due to birth. How is rebirth to cease? Maharshi, who is born? Is the self born or is it the body? Devotee, it is the body. Maharshi, then let the body ask how its rebirth may cease. Devotee, it will not ask, so I am asking. Maharshi, whose is the body? You were without it in your deep sleep. After the I thought arose, the body arose. The first birth birth is that of I thought. The body has its birth subsequent to I thought. So its birth is secondary. Get rid of the primary cause and the secondary cause will disappear by itself. Devotee, how is that I thought to be checked from rising? Mercy by self quest. Devotee, I try to understand but without success. Can I find the self by means of japa? If so, please tell me how. Mercy, what japa? Why should you make artificial japa? You can find out the eternal and natural japa always going on within you. Devotee, some upadesh will probably help me. Mercy, if I say do Rama Rama to one who has not struggled through books like you, he will do it and stick to it. If I say so to one like you who have read much and are investigating matters, you will not do it for long because you will think, why should I do it? Above all, who am I that should be repeating the mantra? Let me find out who am I before I proceed further. And so you will stop japa and begin investigation. Devotee, it is said the senses are outgoing. Prachikani. Inward turned is sight. Avarti chakashu. What is avarti chaksuhu? Inward turned sight. Mercy. It does not mean replacement of the eyeball in the opposite direction. What is chaksuhu? Devotee, the eye. Mercy, does the eye see or is it the someone behind the eye that sees? If the eye could see, then does a corpse see? The one who is behind the eye sees through the eye. He is meant by the word chaksu, chaksuhu. Devotee, Divya Chaksu is necessary to see the glory of God. This physical eye is the ordinary Chaksu. Mercy, oh, I see. You want to see million sun splendor and the rest of it. Devotee, can we not see the glory as million sun splendor? Mercy. Can you see the single sun? Why do you ask for millions of suns? Devotee, it must be possible to do so by divine sight, wherein the sun shines not, etc. That is my supreme abode. Therefore, there is a state where the sun is powerless. That state is that of God. Mercy, alright, find Krishna and the problem is solved. Devotee, Krishna is not alive. Mercy, is that what you have learned from the Gita? Does he not say that he is eternal? Of what are you thinking his body? Devotee, he taught others while alive. Those around him must have realized I seek a similar living Guru. Mercy, is Gita then useless after he withdrew his body? Did he speak of his body as Krishna? Natveva ham jatu nasam, never I was not. Devotee, but I want a living Guru who can say the truth first hand. Maharshi, the fate of the Guru will be similar to the fate of Krishna. The questioner retired later. Sri Bhagwan said divine sight means self-luminosity. The word Divya shows it. The full word means the self who is to bestow a divine eye and who is to see. Again, people read in the books, hearing, reflection, and one-pointedness are necessary. They think that they must pass through Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi before attaining realization. Hence, all these questions, why should they wander in that maze? What do they gain at the end? It is only cessation of the trouble of seeking. They find that the self is eternal and self-evident. Why should they not get that purpose even this moment? A simple man not learned is satisfied with japa or worship. A jnani is of course satisfied. The whole trouble is for the bookworms. Well, they will also get on. So here I end this video. Next video number 20 will start with talk number 337. Namaskar my dear friend. Please like, comment and share the video and सब्सक्राइब द चैनल. नमस्कार मेरे प्यारे दोस्तों, माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, नमस्कार.